A wedding is one of the most important events in life, celebrating the new start for a newlywed couple. And today, my husband and I were attending my sister-in-law's wedding. Truth be told, I didn't really want to go, but I ended up going anyway. However, as the reception progressed and dishes were served one after another, I was somehow presented with a kid's meal. In contrast, everyone else seemed to be enjoying upscale French cuisine. I was asking the staff about this mix-up when my mother-in-law approached me with a sly smile. "Are you enjoying the wedding?" she said, looking down on me. Before I could respond, my husband spoke up. "My name is Olivia. I just turned 32 and I run my own original apparel company. I'm married to William, who's 2 years older than me. We got married 3 years ago after meeting at a department store. Most of my company's products are sold in apparel shops in department stores. And my husband worked as a security guard at one of those stores. Among the generally older security guards, he stood out to me as he was younger. I was 27 at the time, and he was 29. He was muscular but still looked slender. I learned after we got married that he used to be a firefighter, but retired early due to a lung injury sustained in a fire. We met every time I went to pitch my products at the employee entrance, and he eventually asked me out to dinner. I was single then, and one thing led to another, leading to our relationship. And we got married 2 years later. Life with my husband is joyful. We hardly ever argue. However, the challenge is that we're both busy with work and have little time together. But I have no complaints, except for one issue with his family. He has an older sister, Sarah, who's 35. And this Sarah was quite troublesome. It all started on a day when my husband and I both managed to get the same day off using our paid time off. "Why don't we go shopping since we finally have a day off together?" "Sounds great. I've been wanting new shoes, so that's perfect." We rarely have the same days off due to my role as a business owner. I can't easily take time off, and it's my fault. As the owner, it's harder for me to take days off. Naturally, in a sense, I have the least priority taking days off. Plus, my daily tasks often keep me busy until the morning. As a result, I usually miss my husband when he leaves for work in the morning. But when we were finally set for a date, our doorbell suddenly rang at 7 a.m. Who could it be at this time? My husband grumbled as he went to answer the door. Then, "Hurry up and open up!" someone was yelling. "Sis?" he exclaimed, and I followed him to the door. When we opened it, there stood my sister-in-law, Sarah, with a suitcase. "Sarah! What brings you here at this hour?" We were completely baffled. Then, with a nonchalant expression, she said, "Let me stay here for a while, okay?" "Excuse me? What do you mean, sis?" Naturally, we were perplexed. She just showed up out of the blue, asking to stay as if it was the most natural thing. And so we asked, "Why? What's going on? You didn't even tell us you were coming." "Well, I'm getting married soon, and the venue is close to your home. It's a hassle to come all the way here for venue inspections and dress fittings. Then I remembered you both lived around here," she said and started to barge in. I immediately objected. "Wait. We finally have a day off together, and we were about to go out." Hearing this, Sarah's face suddenly brightened. And then, "Oh yeah? Where to? Shopping?" she said, getting excited. My husband and I exchanged a look. Don't tell me you're planning to come with us?" I asked hesitantly. "Why not? Is there a problem?" she retorted defiantly. At her audacity, my husband and I were dumbfounded. Then she added, "I want to go look at baby stuff. I want to make sure I'm ready for the baby." She seemed all set to tag along, taking the lead while we stood frozen at the entrance. "Come on, let's get ready. We'll leave by 9 a.m. How are we going? By car?" My husband's face darkened at her self-centered attitude. I rarely see him look so gloomy, but it seems he's never gotten along with his sister. He mentioned they used to fight a lot as kids. Is there any way you can leave? William and I just want to enjoy our day off together. Sarah glared at me and snapped. What? You want to exclude me? Wait, you're from a single mother family, right? Yes, I am. So what? Ugh, figures. I've known some people from single mother families, and they lack empathy. They always look down on others. Her words were ironic, as she was looking down on me while saying that. She just claimed that single mother families produce judgmental people, and was she not doing exactly that? Unlike me, she had both parents. Her whole perspective was a baseless stereotype, and it infuriated me. That's prejudice. I'm not like that. And look, even William is uncomfortable. I looked at my husband, and he was glaring at his sister. What's up, William? You got something to say to your own sister? She taunted him. Of course I do. Please, just go home. My husband's tone was firm. Fine, but don't come crying to me later. Especially you, Olivia. I wondered why she singled me out. Thanks for the warning. I replied nonchalantly. With that, she left without another word. After successfully getting rid of her, we had breakfast and went to the nearby mall. But the unlucky start to our day seemed to continue. After shopping, we decided to rest on a bench. Then, we unexpectedly ran into Sarah again. Look who it is. The same too. Guess we ended up at the same place. Sis. My husband muttered, then heard someone calling her name. It was a familiar voice. It was my MIL. Sarah. Let's go see those luxury bags over there. Approaching us, his mother noticed us too. William and Olivia? You too, Mom. He sighed, sounding exhausted. I felt the same way. Dealing with his sister was hard enough, but his mother made it worse. Why? Because she's simply unpleasant. And she quickly showed it. Is that bag from Infinity Tread Shoes? She pointed at the shoe store bag my husband was holding. Yeah, it is. She and his sister exchanged looks and laughed. Since when do you wear such cheap shoes? Look at ours, matching luxury brand shoes. William, choosing the wrong partner brings misfortune. Their contemptuous gaze was mostly directed at me. It was clear I was the main target of their disdain. You talking about me? I asked impulsively, to which my sister-in-law replied. I wonder if we are. Dodging the question, she hurled insults at me. Then my husband interjected. Enough. Mom, your constant bragging about wealth has always been embarrassing and annoying. He was angry. A side of him I had never seen. His job as a security guard lent authority to his voice. But it seemed to have no effect on these two. William, you were born into a wealthy family. Are you okay with this? Being with this uneducated, poor woman? Education doesn't matter much these days. And Olivia is. Despite them being his family, he prioritized defending me. That alone made me happy and strengthened my trust in him. But the two, faced with his opposition, cut him off before he could finish. That's not true. Dad got his job at a major company because of his education. He's even the vice president now and will soon be president. William, you graduated from a famous university, and yet you're with a woman like this. you've really fallen. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law treated me as an outsider, steering the conversation their way. Despite my husband's retort, they showed no remorse. To me, their nature seemed utterly rotten. How much do you earn? By the way, my dad earns $100,000. 120 dash. Before I could finish, my sister-in-law interrupted. Wait, $120 a month? She laughed mockingly and continued. Sorry, I should have been more considerate. That must be tough, especially for a dropout. Hey, enough. My husband tried to interject, but my sister-in-law placed a hand on his shoulder. And then, well, good luck, Sarah said. My husband was visibly angry. I felt a surge of hatred inside me. But these two seemed oblivious to our feelings, continuing the conversation at their own pace. Oh, you both better attend the wedding. Mom's preparing a grand event. Yes. We're sparing no expense for our darling daughter's wedding. You are coming, right, Olivia? The pressure from my mother-in-law felt like I couldn't say no. My husband, being family, would obviously attend. I guess it's okay if he's there. Reluctantly, I agreed to go. If my husband weren't there, I would never attend such a wedding. The day of my sister-in-law's wedding arrived. I finished my piled-up work, and even got a new dress with my husband for the occasion. Arriving at the venue, it was clear my mother-in-law wasn't exaggerating. The luxury hotel, the huge ballroom, decorations, and the size of the wedding cake all spoke of extravagance. You both made it. My mother-in-law approached us upon arrival. Not that I wanted to make it. This was probably my husband's true feelings, showing an uncharacteristic weary expression to his mother. This wedding cost $100,000. We have 500 guests, and the meal is a special course by a top chef. Impressive, isn't it? Only we could do this. She looked down on everyone, but passers-by only offered polite smiles and nods. I was appalled by her need to flaunt her status. Why didn't you spend this much on our wedding? My husband's words reflected our reality. Our wedding was modest, costing $20,000. Therefore, it was a simple wedding with only relatives and a few friends invited, but I was still happy with it. I was content, but in terms of treatment, it was indeed unfair. After all, my husband is her blood-related son. What are you saying? Sarah's fiancé Alex will soon work directly under Dad. Directly? Of course, when Dad becomes president. He'll be groomed to be a key player in the company. It's only natural we welcome him appropriately. Saying this, my mother-in-law laughed proudly. While we were talking, my father-in-law joined us. Emily, it's almost time for Sarah and Alex to make their appearance. Aren't you going to take pictures in the front row? It felt like he was putting an end to our conversation, but it seemed he too was at odds with us. After speaking to my mother-in-law, he turned to us and said, "It's been a while, Olivia. You should feel honored just to be invited to such a lavish wedding. You'll probably never experience anything like this again in your life." Unlike my mother-in-law, he spoke calmly, but his words were laced with condescension. My husband couldn't help but retort, "Why do you have to say it like that, Dad?" My father-in-law replied with a cold expression, "Don't get me wrong. I never approved of your marriage. Remember the conditions I set?" My husband glanced at me briefly before looking away. What? I had never heard what was about to be revealed. The fact that our marriage was never approved by him was new to me. Turning away from me, my husband spoke weakly. Graduate from a famous university. Earn over $100,000 a year. That's right. You remember well. And Olivia? Turning his gaze briefly to me and then back to my husband, he continued. Olivia did drop out, but it doesn't matter. She's making money. Before my husband could finish, my mother-in-law interrupted him, shouting, Daniel! Look, Sarah has finished changing into her second dress. She shouted loudly towards us. If it weren't for the fact that this was her daughter's wedding, such behavior would surely have warranted complaints for being disruptive. Others glanced at her, forcing smiles. Called by my mother-in-law, my father-in-law said, We'll talk about this later. And left the scene. My husband murmured, Olivia is much more amazing than you think, Dad. As he watched his father leave. I felt comforted knowing he thought so. No matter what, he was on my side. That truth alone lifted my spirits more than anything. When the bride and groom appeared, the hall erupted in applause. The feast began with my sister-in-law's announcement. We have a special course prepared by a top chef today. Please enjoy it. After her words, the waitstaff began serving the food. However, my mother-in-law and a server were arguing close by. Are you sure about this? Yes, just do it. I understand. The server left, looking uncomfortable. Which I soon realized was the preparation for a prank on me. With the large number of guests, serving the food took time. And when my meal finally arrived, I was taken aback. Huh? In front of me was a kid's meal. I immediately asked the server. Excuse me, but there must be a mix-up. I questioned calmly, despite thinking such a mistake was unusual. The server looked at me uncomfortably. The same one who had spoken with my mother-in-law earlier. Can you replace it, please? I added, as the server remained silent. Finally, he spoke. This isn't a mistake. I was instructed to serve you the kids' meal. What? My voice of surprise made my husband join the conversation. What's wrong, Olivia? Why a kids' meal? He too was surprised to see my meal. Why is my meal different from everyone else's? It was more embarrassing than shocking. People around started to stare at me. Why do you have a kids' meal? I don't know either. Then my mother-in-law approached, laughing. How is your meal? Perfect for a dropout from a single-parent home, right? If you don't like it, you can leave. My mother-in-law was unilaterally spouting whatever she wanted to say. I was reaching my limit of patience. No matter how much I disliked my sister-in-law, I couldn't ruin someone else's wedding. I had been holding back because of that, but if the mother-in-law, who was orchestrating the wedding, was causing the disruption, there was no need for me to keep holding back. Just when I thought this, my husband spoke up first. Seriously, what are you doing? Aren't you embarrassed by this childish behavior? His tone was calm but filled with anger. His eyes weren't smiling. I had never seen such a cold expression from him. As if he was looking down on an inferior creature. What? Childish? What are you talking about? My mother-in-law feigned ignorance. But my husband didn't let her get away with it. This. Everything. Why serve a kid's menu to an adult? It's obvious Olivia wouldn't order such a thing. Then my mother-in-law retorted, her face turning red. Marrying a poor woman and you dare to talk back to us. You've become a mere commoner since you married her, away from our elite path. What a terrible way to speak. Though the notion that wealthier people are superior exists everywhere, my mother-in-law seemed to exceed that by far. I interrupted their conversation and spoke coldly to my mother-in-law. True, I dropped out. That's because my parents passed away before I could finish middle school. But now, I'm the president of a company. President? I bet it's nothing significant. My mother-in-law's momentum was unrelenting. Seeing this, I sighed. I didn't want to do this because it's so childish. I muttered meaningfully, prompting a curious look from my mother-in-law. What exactly do you do? She spoke arrogantly, thinking she was in a superior position. It was disgusting to see such an attitude. Daniel's company is Solar Burst Innovations, right? Yes, that's right. And he'll be the next president. Is that so? By the way, the current president, Morgan, is a major client of my company. The socks distributed in your company every month are commissioned directly to my company by Morgan himself. What? My mother-in-law was momentarily lost for words. The socks I mentioned, developed by my company, were exceptional for their comfort even after long hours of wear. Originally, the technology was used for t-shirts but was expanded to all clothing types. Everything Morgan wore was from our company. I was the one who suggested him to try our socks for his entire company. Then he told me that he would provide our socks to his employees. Since then, our relationship with him has been close, professionally. As mentioned, everything he wore was made by our company. That means even if you boast about your husband becoming the next president, if I report to Morgan about you, that might just remain a dream. As I said this, my mother-in-law's face turned pale as if her fever had broken. You know him, the president of my husband's company? Did you know? Morgan didn't go to high school either. What? He's one of those uneducated people you despise. Shall I convey your words about the importance of education to him, exactly as you said them to me? When I said that, my mother-in-law pleaded. Please, no. Don't do that. Her demeanor completely weakened. People like her crumble easily when they realize their power is threatened. As my father-in-law rushed over, I repeated the same to him. Daniel, I'll advise Morgan not to make you the president. Please, don't do that. If that happens, does your pride not allow it? My onslaught was relentless. I was surprisingly calm while confronting both of them. As I stood up to my in-laws, the surrounding crowd became noisy. Of course they did. Trouble had started just as the meal began, and only our table's progress had stopped. Sensing the commotion, my sister-in-law approached our table. What's all this fuss about? Unaware of the situation, I bluntly told her. Sarah, by the way, I make over $120,000 a year. My business is stable, thanks to that. I didn't tell you the other day because you interrupted our conversation. Upon hearing this, my sister-in-law's face contorted. She stood frozen, gripping the hem of her dress. After I fought back, the entire in-law family looked as if their souls had been sucked out in an instant. So, everything we've been doing to you is… Yes, just harassment towards me. And self-destructive acts that undermine Daniel's position. As I declared this, my mother-in-law suddenly changed her attitude and knelt on the floor. She clasped her hands together. I'm sorry. Please, I beg you, forgive me. Seeing her, I wondered if she had any pride left at all. Her readiness to get on the floor so easily seemed almost refreshing. But it still wasn't a reason for me to forgive them. No, I won't. You've judged and insulted people based on their appearances. You should face the consequences. Please! We've almost used up our savings for this wedding. If I don't become president and get a higher salary, we'll struggle financially. My father-in-law got on the floor, following my mother-in-law's example. My sister-in-law watched with a powerless expression, and then asked weakly, Dad, you're out of money? Yes. I used all I had for this wedding as a gift to you too. What about our honeymoon funds? Alex's promotion? Her voice trembled. But she was only lamenting her worsened position, disliking being brought down from her pedestal. It was all about her own convenience. She wasn't trying to solve anything by herself, always depending on others. Wait, you boasted about being wealthy and were planning to go on your honeymoon using your parents' money? How shameful. What did you say? My sister-in-law retorted, but she had nothing more to say. To all three of them, I declared, real wealthy people and celebrities don't brag about themselves. In other words, you're all just fakes. Know your place. Oh. My harsh words completely disheartened them, and my husband murmured his admiration. After that, of course, the wedding was no longer feasible. And we suddenly had free time. We left the pitiful wedding venue of my sister-in-law. Later, I explained everything to Morgan. Got it. So, it wouldn't be fun for you if Daniel became president, right? To be frank, yes. Don't worry. I won't forgive Daniel for insulting you, nor will I make him president. Maybe I should transfer him to an overseas branch. Morgan laughed as he said this. A week later, my father-in-law rushed to us. Please! Convince Morgan to cancel the overseas transfer. His face was filled with desperation. Apparently, Morgan was seriously working to transfer my father-in-law to another branch. When I heard it was Brazil, a half-day flight away, I almost burst into laughter. In the end, Morgan didn't cancel the request, and my father-in-law, unable to go to Brazil, seemed to have resigned from the company. Additionally, there was a big commotion involving my sister-in-law's fiancé due to recent events. First, the wedding turned into a complete mess. Then, the promised position at my father-in-law's company fell through when he resigned. My sister-in-law's fiancé originally worked in Italy. He moved to America for the wedding, only to be caught up in this absurd drama. In the end, my sister-in-law's marriage was called off, and she was in great shock that she ended up in the hospital. My mother-in-law, affected by the downfall of my father-in-law and the mental breakdown of my sister-in-law, lost all her hair and now looks like an old woman, as my husband said. The lives of these three people who freely insulted others lost their shine in an instant. Like a diamond that turns out to be just a lump of carbon, the wealthy life of my in-laws was nothing but a facade of pretense. Life can hinge on a single event, influencing the future. This applies equally to both good and bad events. This was indeed such an occasion, I believe. As for me, I'm using my savings to prepare for building my dream home with my husband. While my in-laws' lives were becoming more difficult, my business was generating more and more profits. Moreover, perhaps due to things settling down, I had become pregnant. With financial stability and a growing family, we must seem like celebrities to my current in-laws. Still, I made a promise to myself to live happily with my husband and our future child, never becoming arrogant no matter what. It was one of those days when the overcast sky seemed to reflect my unsettled heart. I received a call from the police on my mobile phone. Yes, this is Mia. What? The news was grim. My husband Richard had been in a traffic accident and was rushed to the hospital, unconscious. I was at my part-time job, so I asked for permission to leave early and headed straight to the hospital. The drive there was nerve-wracking. Being rushed to the hospital was no small matter. My hands trembled uncontrollably, and I could feel my heart pounding louder and louder. Upon arrival, a relatively young-looking doctor briefed me. He said Richard's life wasn't in danger, but he had suffered a severe head injury and there might be lasting effects. A few minutes later, my daughter-in-law Lily and grandson Paul arrived. Lily was carrying a traveling bag in one hand and holding Paul's hand with the other. However, once in the hospital room, Paul unusually started to fuss. "Mom, I'm thirsty." "What?" but I don't have any drinks with me. Then buy me something. As Lily went to buy a drink, Paul slowly pulled an envelope out of his pocket. Grandpa gave me a letter to read. He said to read it in secret. For me? I opened it curiously to find a folded piece of stationery. Reading the words written in Richard's handwriting, I couldn't understand its meaning. However, it was clear he was trying to communicate something. Clutching onto a sliver of hope, I instinctively reached for Richard's wallet. I had to check its contents before Lily returned, my hands almost slipping in haste. Carefully yet swiftly, I opened his long wallet. My name is Mia. I'm a part-time working housewife, working about 5 days a week. Having been at the same job for about 7 years, I guess you could say I'm somewhat of a veteran there. The decision to start working part-time came after discussions about my husband's retirement. Richard, a teacher, had the option to retire at 65 or continue working as a part-time lecturer. If I become part-time, our income will decrease. We need to think about our retirement. Right. We should try to save a bit more. After that conversation, I started working at a nearby supermarket. By then, our son Christopher had already found a job, leaving just the two of us at home. After graduating, Christopher immediately began working for a company and started living alone in an apartment near the downtown area. I worried about whether he was doing all right, but he was already a responsible adult. I realized there was no need for undue concern. One day, I got a call from Christopher. Hello, Mom? I've got someone I want you to meet. Both Richard and I were surprised by this news. The woman Christopher brought home was very cheerful and left a good impression. Nice to meet you, I'm Lily. Her smile was so bright, she could be mistaken for a celebrity, and she blushed as she made eye contact with Christopher. She was introduced to him by a coworker at his company, and they hit it off the day they met. I just knew she was the one the moment I met her. Come on, how many times are you going to say that? Watching the happy couple made us feel joyous too. We thought they could overcome anything that came their way. Richard and I celebrated their union. When it came time to decide where they would live after their wedding, Christopher said something unexpected. Actually, I was hoping we could live at home. Don't you want to rent a place of your own? Yeah, but Lily thought it would be nice to have support nearby, especially if she got pregnant. Lily had lost her own parents in an accident and had no one else to rely on. Indeed, pregnancy and childbirth can be daunting. Even someone as upbeat as Lily might have her own concerns. Understood. We'll make the spare room available for you. Thanks, Mom. With that, it became official that I'd take on the role of mother-in-law in a more meaningful way. I was worried about whether we'd get along, but Richard didn't seem concerned at all. Well, once the baby arrives, Christopher will probably find a new place and move out. He said nonchalantly, sipping his coffee and returning to his novel. I hope so. I shrugged in response. A few months into their stay, we learned Lily was pregnant, and we all rejoiced. Despite her morning sickness and emotional ups and downs, I was there for her throughout the pregnancy. The following year, Lily gave birth to a healthy boy. As a grandmother, I was overjoyed and moved by his arrival. They named him Paul. That's a good name. Richard smiled every day, watching his grandson, almost too busy to read his novels. For a while, I couldn't settle down either. Lily, still new to parenting, frequently asked for help. She needed help with diapers, feeding, and night cries, especially when Paul got sick. Lily, you're a mom now. You've got to manage on your own without relying on me. But I'm just unsure if I'm doing it right. You're doing great. Don't worry. Despite my encouragement, Lily had a hard time believing in herself. In the end, supporting Lily's parenting took longer than expected. As a result, I had to take more time off from my part-time job, eventually reducing my shifts to 3 days a week. A year after Paul was born, Lily seemed confident enough to manage on her own. "Mia, I can do it. I can manage by myself now." She said this with a smile, which became more frequent. Her smile deeply reassured me. Seasons changed a few times, and 4 years had passed. Before we knew it, both Richard and I had turned 60, and we even took photos to celebrate the occasion, which feels like just yesterday. Richard retired and started working as a part-time lecturer at the same school. Christopher seemed busy, always muttering something as he faced his laptop day after day. Peeking over, I saw complex pie charts and spreadsheets filled with numbers. "Don't overdo it, okay? Why not take a break and play with Paul?" "Yeah, I will once I finish this," he replied, somewhat distractedly, before returning his gaze to the screen. I sighed inwardly at this. Meanwhile, I found the right time to go back to working part-time 5 days a week. Going back to work as before, I felt like I could relax a bit more. Christopher and Lily didn't express any desires to move out. Lily didn't resume working and dedicated herself to household chores and childcare. Since Christopher was earning, they didn't seem to worry about living expenses. However, I was surprised when she asked to contribute a little to the living expenses. "Please, Mia. I'll continue to take care of the household and childcare as before. Isn't Christopher's income enough? We want to save for the kids' education and extracurricular activities in the future." But before I could say more, Richard chimed in. "Why not? Education costs a lot these days for kids." His perspective, coming from someone in education, held some weight. It's a wise decision on her part. "See, Richard agrees with me." It seemed she took Richard's approval as a green light. Reluctantly, I agreed to arrange for some living expenses. Paul started preschool, and it's been 2 weeks since his enrollment. The daily struggle of getting him to wear his shoes and stop crying had become routine, but Lily seemed to be having a hard time with him. "Come on, Paul. The bus is going to leave." "No, no, no. I want to play with Grandpa." "Grandpa has work today. He's not at home." "No. Paul, your teachers and toys at preschool are waiting for you." Lily and I used all kinds of tricks to cheer him up. That's how they would leave every day. But something bothered me. Sometimes Lily didn't come back home after dropping off Paul. The walk to the bus stop was only about 5 minutes, not far at all. Worried she might have gotten into trouble, I tried calling her, but there were times when my calls went unanswered. On such days, she would return home with Paul as if nothing happened, right on time. "Hey, where did you go during the day, Lily?" When I asked, she hesitated slightly before responding. "Oh, just running errands, shopping for household items, clothes, you know." "Seems like you were gone for quite some time though." "Just taking a little break." "Mom, let her have her breaks." Christopher intervened, perhaps feeling sorry for her. Indeed, a little break is necessary for someone balancing household and childcare duties. "Right. I'm sorry for sounding accusing." No one thought to distrust her for taking time off during the day. In fact, it was recognized as something she needed. However, my concerns about her weren't limited to just that. One evening, as I was relaxing in the living room, Lily came over to me. "Mia, I have a favor to ask." "What is it? You seem very formal." "I was wondering if we could increase the living expenses a bit more." I couldn't believe my ears. "Is the current amount not enough?" "Well, you know, with Paul going to preschool and me making friends with other moms, I get invited to lunch. Lily answered, visibly flustered. Can't you manage those outings with the money you already have? With prices going up and they disappear just buying Paul's diapers. Indeed, I had noticed the rising costs lately. I reluctantly agreed to increase the living expenses slightly. But that wasn't the end of the money requests. She kept finding reasons to ask for more. What are you spending all that money on? Well, I've been shopping online. She admitted to using Christopher's laptop for online shopping, buying things impulsively to relieve stress. I suggested finding other ways to deal with stress, which she agreed to at the time. But within a few days, she was asking for money again. This cycle repeated, and I grew tired of it. Lily, you need to think more carefully about how you're using money. That's not it. Then maybe you should consider taking up a part-time job. We can't keep this up. After I said this, Lily left the room with a sad, resigned look. After that day, the persistent requests for more living expenses stopped. Instead, I noticed something strange about Richard. He stopped reading his books and spent time in his room on the computer, doing something he wouldn't talk about. It's just school stuff. I'd rather not have it seen. So, how about we go out somewhere this weekend? I've got plans this weekend, sorry. He would then retreat to his room. This behavior was new. He never used to bring work home before. Lately, he also seemed distant from Lily, avoiding her in the house. But then again, I've also caught them whispering in the hallway. Something's definitely off. Feeling uneasy, I discreetly hired a detective to investigate Richard. I hoped there was nothing wrong under our roof. After a few anxious days, fortunately, the investigation revealed nothing suspicious. There was nothing suspicious about them. Whatever I was feeling, it seemed unfounded. Was it all in my head? With these thoughts, I continued my routine, going to the part-time job and back home. It was on a cloudy day, mirroring my unsettled heart, that I received a call from the police. Yes, this is Mia. Yes, Richard is my husband. What? The officer spoke in a calm yet slightly excited tone. He informed me that Richard had been in a traffic accident, unconscious, and rushed to the hospital. I was so shocked that I could hardly comprehend the rest of the conversation. The background noise suggested it was a serious accident. Okay, I understand. Yes, I'll be right there. Goodbye. I rushed to explain the situation to my manager and got permission to leave for the hospital. The drive to the hospital was agonizing. An emergency transport is never a minor matter. I felt a cold sweat on my back, my limbs wouldn't stop shaking. And my heart pounded louder and louder. Upon arrival, a relatively young-looking doctor briefed me. He mentioned a contusion on his left shoulder, but no life-threatening injuries. However, Richard had sustained a severe head injury, and there might be lasting effects. I was told he would need to stay in the hospital for a while, and I handled the admission procedures. I wonder if it would be faster to have Lily bring things like a change of clothes and a toothbrush. With that thought, I hurriedly called Lily, asking her to bring the necessary items. After a few rings, Lily answered the phone. Hello, Lily? Richard has actually... What? I can't hear you very well. Lily seemed to be outside. I could hear the noise of people and passing cars in the background. And for some reason, she sounded rushed in her conversation. Richard's been in a traffic accident and has been hospitalized. I raised my voice to a level that wouldn't disturb those around me. What? Hospitalized? That's terrible. So, I need you to bring a hospital set. Got it. I hung up, puzzled by Lily's emotionless response. A few minutes later, Lily and Paul arrived. Lily was carrying a traveling bag in one hand and holding Paul's hand with the other, both in sandals. I had finished all the paperwork, so I went to meet them. "Grandpa's sleeping. Tell him to get well soon." "Get well!" Paul twirled his finger and said so in his lisping voice. I watched, hoping Richard could hear him. Then, unexpectedly, Paul said, "Mom, I'm thirsty." "What?" "But I didn't bring any drinks with me." "Then buy me something." "Wait till we get home." But, unusually, Paul started fussing about being thirsty. All right. Stay here with Grandma." "I'm sorry, I'll go to the vending machine." Lily left as if admitting defeat. "Grandma, look." Paul turned his pants pockets inside out and took something out. "Grandpa gave me a letter for you to read. He said to read it in secret." "For me?" It was an envelope, unsealed. Curious, I took out the folded stationery inside. Written in Richard's handwriting was, "Lily dangerous, evidence in wallet." I tried to calm my racing heart, unsure of its meaning. But it was clear he was trying to communicate something. Could it mean there was evidence in his wallet? Wallet? We usually don't look through or show each other our wallets. Yet, there might be a clue here. Holding on to a sliver of hope, I instinctively reached for Richard's wallet. As I thought about checking its contents before Lily returned, my hands almost slipped in haste. Carefully, yet quickly, I opened his long wallet. Inside, there were some cash, receipts, a debit card. And, hidden among them, an SD card. Could this be what he meant? I picked up the SD card between my thumb and forefinger, lifting it to eye level. Just then, I heard Lily's footsteps returning. I quickly stashed the SD card in my jacket pocket and put Richard's wallet back. "Is this okay?" "I don't want it anymore." "What?" "But..." "Never mind that, let's go home. Christopher will be back soon." While soothing a disappointed Lily, we left the hospital room. That night, when the whole family was asleep, I turned on Richard's computer. I inserted the SD card to see what was on it. What could it be? Photos, videos, and some Word documents appeared on the screen. Photos? Videos? Richard wasn't the type to carry a camera or shoot videos. So, having photos and videos stored like this was unusual. Without hesitation, I clicked on them. To my shock, they were evidence of Lily's affair. I gasped and covered my mouth. Then, I opened the Word documents. I thought they might be Richard's diary, but they were different. They were Richard's own investigation into the affair, written like a diary. What on earth? I read through the documents, forgetting about the time. But I knew this needed to be resolved quickly. Later, I called Christopher and told him we needed to talk about Lily. "What's up, Mom?" "What about Lily?" He sat at the living room table, looking puzzled. I showed him the evidence Richard had given me and explained everything. Christopher was shocked and immediately called Lily. She came, looking sleepy after putting Paul to bed. "Lily, don't you have something to say to Christopher and me?" "What?" I laid out the photos and printed copies of Richard's diary on the table. "This is the evidence. You've been having an affair, haven't you?" The photos showed Lily intimately walking and chatting with a man who wasn't Christopher. "What is this?" "Pretending won't help. These photos were taken by a detective Richard hired." I spread them out one by one on the table. "And these are photos taken by Richard." They were from a day when he unusually said he had errands and didn't go out with me. That day, Richard had been following Lily. "I know who the other man is too." Richard figured it out. No way. The delivery guy who comes here often. You were doing all that online shopping just to see him. What a surprise. It's not what it looks like, Christopher, listen. It's not like that. Lily's voice trembled. Under the living room light, her face turned pale, desperately denying the affair. I've been perfect with the housework and childcare. I wouldn't do something like that. But I didn't believe her words. With all the evidence laid out, she was still trying to hide the truth. Lily, where were you when Richard had the accident? I was out shopping. Is that all? What are you implying? I'm starting to think you might have caused Richard's accident. She paused for a moment, but then spoke up. On what basis would you say that? I've read Richard's diary. You were confronted by Richard about the affair, weren't you? What? And at that time, you admitted to it. Not only that, but you also promised to stop if it was kept a secret from the family. Lily's eyes shifted. I continued to press on. But your relationship with that man wasn't over. That's why Richard saw you meeting him at the cafe on the day he followed you. No, that was... Richard overheard you saying you resented him. You were planning revenge, weren't you? Well... So, Richard felt his life was in danger, leaving behind photos, videos, and a diary. Christopher nodded in understanding. Dad saved those on an SD card and hid it in his wallet in case something happened to him. In his wallet? The letter Paul gave me revealed it. That short letter given in the hospital room. Without it, I might not have discovered these proofs. Richard knew you were wary of him but counted on you overlooking Paul. That kid! So, he entrusted Paul with the letter, to give it to me if anything happened. I methodically continued, exposing Lily's actions. And that day, Richard had an accident because of you. No, it's not true. When I called you, Lily, you were still outside, sounding more rushed and different than usual. That doesn't mean... Was it right after you caused Richard's accident? She looked down with her shoulders shaking, and then whispered. I didn't think it would go that far. What? I just wanted to scare him a little. I pushed him from behind while he was waiting at a traffic light. That's outrageous! I thought no cars would come by there, like always. Then, by chance, a car came, and Richard. How could you do that? Dad could have been. Christopher lunged at Lily. It's not my fault. Richard is to blame for getting in the way. Lily raised her voice in defiance, insisting on her innocence. That argument won't hold. It's clearly your fault. It's not me. I'm not the bad one. A little affair shouldn't matter. How can you say that with Paul around? I still want to be seen as a woman. I can't stand this anymore. I'm calling the police. Christopher took out his mobile phone to call the authorities. I'll testify that Lily caused Dad's accident. Stop, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. For the first time, Lily voiced an apology, crying out. But it was too late for Christopher and I to forgive her. Christopher reported the entire situation to the police over the phone. The next day, we went to the police station with Lily. The police were surprised by the rapid development of the case. Lily, Christopher, and I were interrogated. I submitted all the evidence Richard had collected, but more decisive proof emerged. It was a surveillance camera from a grocery store near the accident scene. The footage showed Lily pushing Richard, becoming irrefutable evidence. Lily was arrested, and Christopher served her with divorce papers. Lily protested, but Christopher was firm in his decision.
What about Paul?
We'll take care of Paul. And we'll also demand compensation from you and your affair partner in the divorce proceedings. Please, have mercy. Without looking back at her, Christopher stated this matter and returned home. Christopher was granted custody of Paul. As for the man Lily had an affair with, he stopped making deliveries to our place. I thought maybe his delivery area had changed, but that wasn't the case. According to his successor, the previous delivery man had suddenly quit his job. Perhaps he left because he wanted nothing more to do with Lily. But he did that to himself. A few days after the accident, Richard woke up, and we were informed. On my day off from part-time work, I visited Richard. Despite the visible cuts and bruises, he smiled when he saw me. My left shoulder still hurts. What about any lasting effects? They did tests, and it seems there are no lasting effects. But I'll need rehabilitation. I'm so relieved. It's a miracle. You're exaggerating. After being discharged, Richard heard about Lily from me and Christopher and was disheartened. So it came to that. I'm sorry for keeping it from you guys. He apologized to us. Since then, Richard became somewhat withdrawn. He praised and doted on Paul, who had kept his promise, but otherwise seemed distracted. He probably felt guilty for driving Lily to desperation. It's unfair, he did nothing wrong. However, his former students reached out to him. They would stop by our house after school to chat with Richard and then leave. It was clear how much they admired him, even without any upcoming exams. This support must have been a great comfort to him. Gradually, Richard regained his energy and returned to teaching. While I continued my part-time job, Christopher and I took Paul to preschool. With a school play coming up, we planned to attend as a whole family. I wish for nothing but health and happiness for our family.